Hi, I'm Jody Harris with World Tree Coaching, and we are going to be talking today about creating a sense of home. And so I'm Jody, and I'm here with
I'm
Hui-chin.
Hui-chin. Certified financial planner with Pavlov Financial Planning. Yeah, and like Jody said, so today we're talking about creating a sense of home, and this is actually our fourth episode. And we decided on this topic because Jody has something she wants to share about, how to create a home because she has 3 kids, and that's a very topic close to her heart. So I guess I know, Jody, you want to ask me a question, so I'll let you ask.
Yeah, so I thought a way to start, because so many people talk about this, this is such a big topic for people who live around the world, and it's a challenging topic, I think, sometimes for people to really address. So I wanted to ask you to kind of, as we get our conversation going, if you have a place that you consider home, and if so, what is it that makes that place feel like home?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a little bit about my background. So I moved to the US when I was 22 to go to grad school, and I met my husband there. So I am 33 now, so I'm revealing my age. So in the past 12 years, I've been, excuse me, basically being all over the place in the US and then overseas, both for my career and my husband's career. So really, since I became an adult, or if you become an adult as you graduate from college, since then, I've never stayed in one place for over 3 years. That's the longest I've been in one single place. And because of that, I don't think as an adult I ever called any place home.
Right.
So when people ask me where's home, it's default back to Taipei,
Right.
where I was from, where my family still is.
Right.
But if somebody from Taiwan asks me where's home, there'll be 2 answers because both my parents are from the south of Taiwan, a place called Tainan. So I would sort of distinguish myself because Taipei is sort of metropolitan. A lot of people coming from other places to Taipei to work, and my parents were the same. They came after when they were adult and looking for opportunity to work. So whenever I talk about heritage, I would point back to, my parents are from Tainan, and I still have grandparents and relatives and from the south. So that's how I think about myself and where my home is. Yeah, but in terms of, I think that's what make those 2 places home to me. Because of people.
Yeah, the connection.
Connection, heritage. Yeah, but since then I haven't been at a place that's long enough to, sort of override that.
Right.
How about you?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I mean, to share a little bit about my background is I grew up when my family was originally from Indiana, but when we were in the United States, when I was 5, we moved to Texas. And so from the time I was 5, and then really through college, I lived either in Austin, Texas, or in a suburb of Austin, Texas, like kind of a small town that's like 10 miles from downtown Austin. So I basically consider myself from Austin, and I met my husband there when I was in college, and he was already out of college, and then we got married. And since we've been together, we've been moving, in and out of Austin and in and out of the United States. But then we did go back for graduate school, and we were there for like 8 years between graduate school and then when our oldest son was born, and then our second child was born there, although then we moved right after he was born. So for me, to answer that question, like, Austin is home. And even though we leave a lot and we've come and gone a lot, it is the one place in the world where I get off the plane and I automatically know all the rules. I know the way that it works. I feel from there, you know, and I feel able to just ease right into life. I know the right food to order, the right places to go, the right clothes to wear, and there's no question that it's home, you know.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate to have that, really.
And I like how you mentioned that the right food to order and the right clothes to wear. And that's a huge thing. And I think that thing came out for me in the past few episodes too. You know, like food is so important to me, and having access to or Chinese food or Asian food that actually authentic is important to me.
Yeah.
And in the clothing thing, it's like, you know, when I first moved to the US, like I couldn't find clothing. That's before the petite thing was
right.
And you go to like, you know, you go to the 00 and it's like, this is still too big. So, you know, I guess I just can't buy clothes here.
Oh, you should come back in Japan right now at Gap. You know, I always laugh because they have the quadruple zeros, and I wear a 4, which by US standards is small, but I always have a hard time finding that here. So of course you'd be able to find it.
No, and that's sort of like, maybe this is a good tidbit for contributing to my sort of in-between status. I found that in Taiwan, in Taiwan, sometimes I have to buy a large.
Wow. Yeah.
Especially like pants, because it has to fit, right? You know, like clothes I can buy small or medium, it's fine. But like, you know, I have a bigger sort of hip size, so like I can't, but I'm not tall. So it's pretty much like impossible to buy pants in Taiwan for me. And another thing that sort of made it easier in the US is that once their petite is available, there's actually like, if I get to like petite 0 or something, the hip actually fits. Like, oh, so apparently I'm not the only person with this body size that actually makes standardized clothing for me, and that's really cool. Anyway, so that's
right. But you know what it comes down to, and this is, I mean, is about this question of fit, right? And so we're talking about home, and there's so much that is about the way that it feels, right? The way that you can ease into it and develop a sense of comfort. And, you know, I think that the truth is that no matter how impermanent we feel in our moving from place to place to place, we actually have it within our power to create that sense of home that may not be as identical as the place that truly fits, right? But that you can recreate that sense of ease, I think.
So how do you do that?
Well, I think that obviously there are variations on this, and I think that it depends in some ways on the person. But I do think that there are specific things that that work really well. I think there are specific things that I do, or specific things that I've seen my most successful clients do. One of those is, I think people who take time to reflect on and live by a set of personal values and beliefs feel more comfortable with who they are, and therefore typically ease better into creating a sense of home somewhere. It's almost like living from the heart, or living from who you are, enables you to carry home with you, because you see that more in your own sense of comfort with self. So, you know, I think that when people are able to reflect on their personal values and live from that place, they have a stronger sense of home. I think people who genuinely connect with and build community can create a sense of home anywhere. You know, that finding the people that are your people, who understand you, who get you, who accept you for who you are, and then fully giving yourself to that experience. You know, life is really short. So being like, oh, well, I could call her, but I don't know, I don't want to inconvenience her. Like, just pick up the phone, right? and that creating those relationships, I think, enables people to have a sense of home no matter where they go. And then a third thing I think is, and this comes down, I think, to the more practical, in a sense, kind of like we were saying about food or about clothing or whatever, is that even though we move a lot, when you're able to make your space feel like your space, then you're going to feel more comfortable there. So even if you're just somewhere for a short term, like, often people in our position will be in Washington, D.C., for example, for 6 months or 9 months. And, so I've now done those short Washington, D.C. stints 3 times. So my husband's had language 3 times and probably, hopefully never again. But, I take like the first time I didn't really take anything because I was like, oh, it's a temporary house and I don't need to take anything. And the second time I took, maybe like a rocking chair because I was going to have a baby. And I thought, oh, that would be nice. And, a couple blankets or sheets for our bed that I thought would be nice. And then the third time I took, probably 2 boxes of pictures like to put on the wall, of family pictures and family photo albums and a quilt and a couple pillows for our couch. Just small things that didn't take up that much room, but made that space feel more like home. And I think it's worth it to do that. I mean, not like you have to have a lot of stuff, but to really notice the things that you enjoy having.
Yeah, I think it's like oh, there's the feedback. Okay, it's gone. Yeah. I think eventually it comes down to, like, those 3 things you said was very important, but it comes down to in terms of making yourself feel fit, the feeling of feeling you're fit in your surroundings and where you are. Right. It comes down to really looking at what you can control and what you cannot control.
Right.
As well said. And I feel like a lot of times we focus on what we cannot control is just that natural feeling of I don't belong here.
Right.
Which I feel like there's not too much you can do about it, especially if you're in a foreign culture or that you just don't feel comfortable with, or you're in, certain living arrangements, like if you're in a more dangerous area where, you're not supposed to go out all the time. And, the only way to communicate maybe it's through like a video or something like that. So you just don't have that close personal connections or opportunities to build a larger community. Like if you're in a country where they're just, you don't speak the language and the people who speak the language is a very small population.
Right.
So there's so many things that it's constrain you to feel not at home. But the things you just talked about are the things that everybody can do on their own, and that's the way to help you sort of like counteract those feelings that make you not at home if you don't have the choice of leaving your home.
Yeah. And each of us is in charge of their own definition of home. Like no one decides for you what home means. So if you're in charge of that definition, then, that's really liberating, because you can create a very rigid definition and then be frustrated or unhappy when the setting doesn't fit your definition, or you can enable yourself to create a more flexible definition. And an example that comes to mind is, when we were living in Madagascar, I really went there thinking that I would like make a lot of Malagasy friends, because I had made a fair number of friends at our post before that who, Dominican friends, and was involved in my kids' school, and they were the only non-Dominicans in their school. So I had Dominican friends there. And then I found it harder in Madagascar for a lot of reasons, a lot related to just socioeconomic situation of Madagascar. And in that sense, I had to shift that definition of what I thought my community was going to be. And I ended up making really great friends from all over the world. But if you have a standard of something has to be this way, and it has to be this way in order for me to feel like home, then you're really, I think, potentially setting yourself up for a lot of challenges, I think.
Yeah, and that relates to our talked about last episode about flexibility.
Right.
So if you're interested, go check out our last episode about
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I can share a little similar example myself, but it's more related. So I'm not naturally a person that draw a crowd or, enter into a crowd and meet a lot of people. So my goal was always just try to make at least one local friend wherever I go. So there's a connection for connection of me to that place wherever I go. This person I will keep contact with wherever I go. And now it's very easy, you can do it through Facebook or email. Yeah. So at least so for me that's the one thing that makes me remember I've once called that place my home. Yeah. And I've actually been there. And, not just like a venture that I just, breeze through there no matter how long it is. And I don't have permanent connection to the land and the people there.
Right. Yeah.
That is very important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that because it's about, it's instead of kind of collecting things, we acquire relationships and those you don't have to pack up and not see or whatever. You can maintain those relationships even if it's just through social media or through email or by the phone or whatever. So I'm kind of curious because I know that this is challenging because from a financial perspective, like it's so broad to think of creating a sense of home from the financial perspective. But when you're working with clients, do you feel like, I'm kind of curious, do you feel like this lack of sense of home comes out or comes up in the process of dealing with financial matters? And I don't want to put you on the spot. Hopefully that's answerable.
Well, I think maybe I don't think I in the position to interpret clients' feeling. If they did not explicitly told me I want to do this because I feel like I don't have a home.
Of course.
But I feel like one thing that's really common is for people who want to own a physical building or a house somewhere, especially Americans because they're used to the idea of home ownership. So when if they have to be overseas and sort of like in our situation and they have employer provided housing overseas and they have children, a lot of the people I've talked to express the idea of setting up a home for kids, not necessarily for themselves to retire in, but just establishing that idea of, we are from somewhere. And especially if your kids were born overseas, they never know your country. And a lot of them might not end up they grow up knowing they're Americans, but they may not feel fit in American culture.
Right.
So a lot of parents will want to sort of build that in starting when they're small. So they might want to look into buying, real estate properties or something like that.
Right.
Back the country or the state they're from.
Right.
So it's just it's a pretty big issue. Not an issue, a pretty big topic, in people in our way of life.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't usually. So if you're looking at completely in the financial standpoint, I don't always recommend people buying a house because it depends on what your goals are.
Right.
And especially like me, I don't know where I want to retire yet. So why would I? Sort of set myself up in a place. Right. However, if you find a good opportunity completely in an investment point of view, it's hard for me to judge if buying that specific house is good or not because I'm not in that market. Right. But if you find a really good deal and interest rate is really low and you can afford the payments and you tell me it's definitely going to increase in value because such and such in Gusto district and whatever.
Right.
It's like, yeah, sounds like a good deal, who am I to tell you not to buy a house?
Right.
But in general and overall, the market, the housing growth is not as strong as some people think it's definitely going to be. Like house has a very tangible sort of intimacy for people. So for people who are investing,
right,
they feel more familiar with the house. They were more willing to invest in a house instead of in the market with just numbers and things they don't understand.
Right.
But housing market in the U.S. as a whole doesn't really, in the very long term, doesn't have strong real growth compared to something that's actually producing national GDP. Like investing companies, like having innovation and things like that. So housing as a whole grows. It grows above inflation, but it's in the 30-year period, but it's not. Like, oh, I'm definitely going to my house is going to worth a lot more.
Yeah.
But I think for most people, buying a house on mortgage is really helpful because, first of all, they don't need that big down payment, and second of all, the mortgage serve as this forced saving mechanism.
Right.
Because it's difficult for you to say, I will put $2,000 in the bank every single month. You know? Very few people are able to do that.
Yeah.
But I will pay $2,000 in mortgage every month because that's a liability, and that's a house. I want to keep the house. So although at the very beginning, like what you're paying is actually only interest, you're not even getting the equity.
Right.
From mortgage. But if you can consistently do that for 15 to 30 years, it's a very forced saving mechanism for you. So anyway, I don't know why I go to the whole buying a house thing, but coming back to my original point, it was actually, I was going to say that, so if clients come to me and they say, we want to buy a house because I want to create a home for my children, I usually say, oh, this is a strong enough reason.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, even it's just a neutral financial position, of course I wouldn't tell you to buy a house that make you lose money.
Right. Of course.
You find a house that make it neutral, but you say, this is important to me. I want to bring my kids home every summer, and there's a house they recognize, at least until they go to college. I say, okay, that's more, for me, that's more important when I work with clients, that if you have that emotional attachment to having that home, then it's not really quantifiable.
Right.
So I want to put that at the forefront, and they know it. That's important. And the next step is, okay, finding a house that at least is neutral and better. It's actually earning some value for you.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at how true it is when I think about this creating sense of home, and it's kind of the same thing that you're saying. I think is, the cliche, home is where the heart is, and I think it is so true for people, and I think that creating a sense of home, whether it's making a home out of a place that will never really be your true home, a posting where you're for 2 or 3 years or whatever, or creating a sense of home for the future because of what you want for your family or your retirement or for your children or whatever. It's such a strong urge in people. And it's interesting because I think what we're both saying is that, all other things being equal, right? Thinking about finances or whatever, like following your heart when it comes to creating a sense of home is really the ultimate guide. And that if you follow that, you will have that sense of home, whether it's overseas or at the place that you always consider truly to be your home.
Yeah. And the idea of coming back home too, I guess we haven't have to think too much about it, but the idea of actually returning to a home and realizing this may not be what you remember. It's kind of, we had a interesting trip last week. We went back to Pittsburgh, which is where my husband and I met. We were there for 2 years. And I've been back for 10 years. So this is my first time back. So we're doing like all that, like this is where we used to live and where we met and where we went to school and all those, hopping different points. And I just realized a lot of it is completely different from what you remember. Not necessarily that it has changed. Right. Overall, we feel like the city didn't change very much.
Right.
But it's just like, oh, in my memory, like this looks bigger. and that kind of thing. And, in my memory, like everything was, not as closed in and like, I don't know. It's like, I guess the phase of life you're going through makes a big difference, like on your memory. And that's one thing, eventually we all have to deal with. I'll have to deal with, actually in 1 month, I'm going back to Taiwan for a year and actually living there for the first time for a longer period of time in 12 years. This is now I remember how things work. And there's a lot of, even if you're going back to home, there is adjustment. It's never
absolutely. Yeah, you put that, that lens of your experience while you've been gone on when you go back. It looks different because maybe you're different.
Actually, I do have another question now. I go back to maybe to end this recording. I think we talk a little bit about creating a sense of home for ourselves and maybe for your children, but we haven't really dig deeper into what you do as parents to help your children feel at home, or even teach them what home is.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
Oh gosh, I really think that above all else, having a strong sense of family is the ultimate guide in creating a sense of home. So, we say to our kids, this is Team Harris Edwards, we involve them in decisions, they see my husband and I have a strong partnership and, so all of that stuff is true. On top of that, we try to tell them, for example, even though like our daughter was born in Washington, D.C., so she's not a Texan in any way, but we try to tell them, you're from Austin, Austin is this great city and here's why. And we're fortunate that, my mom still lives there. And we actually, when my stepdad has passed away, but when my mom and stepdad were living in Austin, and then when we were in Madagascar, they were thinking of selling their house and moving to another city in Texas that was really far from Austin. And I won't lie, I practically begged them to stay. I was like, even if you get a smaller house, please don't leave, because it's our home. And it's you're the only ones there. My brother and his wife live in Missouri, and they did decide to stay in the Austin area. They moved to a suburb, but it's basically Austin. And that's something that it's one thing for my husband and I, but it's a whole other layer for the kids that they have this place that they go back to. And, then there's small things like, getting to have your same box of Legos or your same, stuffed animal. And, and those all come back to the same things for each of us, right? They're in a lot of ways the same things we say for adults. It's, being connected to who you are, creating a sense of family, and having those small touchstone things or experiences that you can take with you. It ends up being the same, I think.
Yeah. So do you notice, like, maybe like in your oldest, since, you can see the progression. Can you sort of describe, do you see a difference, like when he first become, being taken around places, now he's older, he's like almost middle school age, right?
Yeah, he's almost middle school age. Yeah, so he was 3.5 when we got into the Foreign Service. And he has always like just fully embraced wherever we are. Our middle son more craves a sense of home and a place being home. I think, you know, I think he really will always see Madagascar as home because we lived there from when he was 4 until he was 6, almost 6. And he, like, if I said, we're going back to Madagascar, he would be totally thrilled, you know? And now I think that, you know, we will have lived in Japan for 4 and maybe even 5 years by the time we leave. And so I think for all of them, that will be true. But as far as the progression, I think that all of them, my oldest is the most able to kind of explain this because of his age, but he said, you know, he says, like, just always moved, you know, I don't know any different. And when we went back to Texas briefly, when we had to medevac and we went back and he came home from school. So he was the first time going to like a public school in Texas. And he came home and he was like, Mom, there are kids that have never been on an airplane, you know? And so it's really like his life. I mean, for all of them, they don't know any different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's home. You know, that's what's home for them, this lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how you easily made a distinction among your children. You know, like you can see like the child who's better at dealing with this and the child that craves something else. Yeah. So I think eventually they will need to discover what it is for themselves. But no, that's really cool to actually hear that from parents. So.
You have to meet them where they are, just like you want to be met wherever you are. You know, you want to have your view of what feels like home respected, and we try to do that with them.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good ending for this episode. It was really cool too. I think we talked about a lot of interesting points, and we will definitely try to summarize it on our blogs. And then we think we're taking a break for probably a month at least, because we are both moving next week.
Yes.
And next time we talk to each other, we'll only have 1 hour.
It's so exciting. Difference. Yay!
Not 12 hours or 13-hour difference. So hope to see you guys hopefully in August.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.